Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, wherever in the world you are. I would like to have a follow-up on this SADC Election Observer Group report on Zimbabwe. The report is out, and their conclusion is very clear. It is just a detailed version of the report that the SADC team gave us, the preliminary. The most important conclusion is the following, and I've just showing it there. This is the conclusion of the final report, section 13.3. The SADC Election Observer Mission noted that, as detailed in section 6 and 7 of this report, some aspects of the harmonized elections fell short of the requirements of the Constitution of Zimbabwe, the Electoral Act, and SADC principles and guidelines covering democratic elections. This is what the group said in their preliminary report. There's been a lot of confusion, particularly from our Zanu PF friends who want to water down the report and pretend that it is a far cry from the original preliminary report. It's actually not. It is. Some of them have argued that the report talks of some aspects of the harmonized elections, meaning that most of the aspects are fine, and therefore then the report would pass. The truth of the matter is, if you go to the sections mentioned in this section 6 and 7, they actually give details of those aspects that fell short. I'll take one in particular, the voters' roll. The detail they shows that the voters' roll was supposed to be made available for verification. It was not. And that failure did not affect just a few voters in the country, or in a few wards, or one or two constituencies, or even one or two provinces. It affected everybody. And thanks to the good work that our friends, Tim Pachedu, had done, it really had laid the background, how serious that voters' roll, how flawed that voters' roll was. Because Tim Pachedu was able to uncover situations where, in some cases, you find there are 20 registered voters in a house that can only accommodate at most 4 people. They also uncovered how some voters had been moved from one ward to another, sometimes from one ward to another ward in another province, in another constituency. And some cases, their names had completely disappeared from the voters' roll. These problems are so serious that you say to yourself, can you seriously have free, fair, and credible election under these conditions? And the answer is no. So it's not so much that it's the some aspects which some of our Zanu PF colleagues would want to emphasize on, and make it as if that is the big issue. It is not. Those few aspects that they've covered, they don't pretend that they've covered everything, are so serious that you cannot honestly say these elections were free, fair, and credible. So that is an important point. The final report itself go on to recommend that the parties involved in the election should still continue with their elections and so forth. That is to be expected. This is the team's report at the time, what they observed during the elections, and soon thereafter. They were not going to stop the normal political machinations. In this particular case, one of the recommendations is that they should follow the legal processes. Take, for instance, if CCC wanted to challenge the results, they should do that in the legal way. That's all they were saying there. But it is important to understand that that recommendation, this report, in fact, is not coming from the SADC heads. The SADC heads now have got to look at this report and make up their own mind on what to do next. That is what we are waiting for now. Zanu PF has seen the report, and as we can see, Zanu PF thinks it's business as usual. Nothing has changed. President Mnangagwa has taken his oath of office, carried out the inauguration. MPs, senators have all been appointed, sworn in, and so forth. Cabinet, everything. That is Zanu PF's reaction to the report. Clearly, they think it's business as usual. What we want to see is what is SADC leaders themselves going to say about it. This is the real test that has got to be that we have got to accept here. That is the main thrust of the report now. What are SADC going to do? The fact that Zanu PF has accepted this as normal, and the report clearly says the election could not have been free, fair, and credible. So that is where we are. The main thrust of tonight's discussion, I would like to focus on, first of all, that SADC leaders may well decide to do nothing. And I'll just invite my guest who has joined us on the discussion there, Ben. What do you have to say about that one? SADC may do nothing about the SADC report. What's your view on that one?
Good morning to our viewers, wherever you are. Thank you for having me, Mr. Mkhori. Thank you for joining us, viewers. When it comes to what SADC has to do, I think it's pretty obvious. They have come up with a report, and the report is not a good one, unfortunately, for Zimbabwe. It would not make sense for them now that they know the results of the report, and then they decide just to shelve the findings. I think now it's a matter of the SADC leaders coming together and, saying it as it is for a change. There's no need to water down, because there is. How can you water down such a report? It's all red for me. It's cause for concern, basically. So I think the honest and the right thing to do is for SADC now to to sit down as, you know, the head of states and find a lasting solution to Zimbabwe's, you know, to Zimbabwe's problem, political problem, actually.
I totally agree with you. I've got here an audio of how likely that is, like how likely SADC going to do the right thing, and I think it's well worth listening. And basically, what this audio is doing is giving us some background on the history of SADC and its past failures, and they are quite significant. And I just want us to listen to that. So if you can bear with me, Benjamin, I'll line it up.
The SADC Power, Code of Conduct and Respect of the Member State's Sovereignty. By Axon Potterer, a community development practitioner and independent political analyst. I understand that politics affects all of us as a nation, and from the community development perspective, as a community development practitioner, I learned that there is no community security without integration. Correct. I have a few questions about the success and failure stories of the SADC, which was formed as SADCC in 1980 in Zambia and later mutated to SADC in 1992 in Namibia. 1. What notable solutions has the SADC achieved since its birth? 2. As history rightly lectures us that the Gukarawindi massacre erupted a few years after the birth of the bloc, what did the SADC do to prevent it or put it to rest? Can we safely say or expect the victims of the Gukarawindi to trust the SADC? 3. If they failed to act, why? 4. Why did the same SADC fail to intervene in the Madagascar or Malagasy coup as well as the ongoing political rapture in Eswatini? 5. Back home Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe is described as politically hostile, and that volatility has never ceased since 1980. Should we expect the SADC to bring any different assistance, judging from the deliberate failure on some notable events, the 2000 chaotic land issue, 2008 electoral dispute, 2017 coup, 2018, and 2023 electoral disputes? 6. Perhaps this is the most important question of the above. Does the SADC have a well-defined legal power or authority to sanction or punish the culprits or the accused? Doesn't this render the bloc to an unquestionable toothless dog, as some say? 7. Does it have the power to overwrite or overturn constitutionally implemented decisions of independent member states? Unless we answer these and other questions, I don't think the SADC is a bloc to trust, judging from its history of perennial failure. Help should come from the
Well, my comment on that one is, as an organization, I would be surprised that they would have come up with the principles and guidelines on how to hold elections without seriously thinking that if somebody blatantly violates those principles, the SADC should be able to take action, even if they cannot intervene in another country. At least the least they can do is put pressure on that member country that you cannot continue being a member of the grouping when you do not want to even uphold some of the basic principles and guidelines on elections. So on that point, I would say Kutisada still has got the room to maneuver. I believe that if they do not, in this particular case, they will lose a lot of credibility. I mean, from that listing on the audio there, you can see Kuti Sadak does not have much political credibility. If it was a bank account, you are scrapping the bottom of the barrel in terms of your bank balance. So in this particular case, if they were to have one of their own observers saying these elections were farce, and they turn around and sweep it under the carpet, I think that would be absolutely damaging. I don't know what is your take on that one, Ben.
Well, we know that SADC has always been, one to play down a situation, or to water down a situation, to just let it go, even though it is evident that the elections or whatever is happening is not the right thing. So they're the ones that are always lowering their bar or their standards to accommodate their members, and this shouldn't be. But I would like to drill on the positive, to say, for once, not just SADC, even the AU itself has come out and this time have stated the exact thing without having to water down anything. Well, I don't think there's need to water down, because they just stated exactly what you and I saw, or what you and I witnessed, right? So now it is to what position, or what are you going to do about the report? This is where SADC's credibility is going to be questioned. What are they going to be doing about it? Are they just going to talk about it and then shelf it? Well, if they do that, it's just like somebody that goes to the mirror and you see there's blemish and you still walk away. I think that would be foolish and well, madness maybe. And this would be damaging to them. And I mean, let's look at what Africa is facing as a continent. There's coups, there's wars that are happening. So how then would, let's say, something erupts in Zimbabwe or any other neighboring country? There's something like maybe a coup. How are they going to start pointing a finger when they lowered the bar to accommodate Zimbabwe? They have to lower the bar again until there's no more rule, there's no more laws. So they have to make a stand. I think this time it shows that they have made great strides in actually calling a spade a spade.
Well, I think the point you're making there is valid, but what we have got to differentiate is the SADC election observer team's report as distinct from the SADC leaders. The report is from the observer team, and they have made it very clear, and I think it's very clear from the quotation I've just given, that the record on those elections were flawed and illegitimate. But the SADC report heads of state may decide to just ignore it. So that is what we were talking about. But what I also wanted to focus on here today is not so much on SADC's witnesses, because let's be honest, SADC did do something right in 2008. It was them who proposed the GNU. And if the opposition had implemented the democratic reforms during those 5 years, Zimbabwe would be in a totally different place. So what I want to also focus on here is, what is it that Zimbabweans ourselves have done wrong, which would give SADC the excuse to sweep this report under the carpet? That is what I would like to focus on. So, do you want to have the first go at?
We have a situation in Zimbabwe which is very sad, where we rely on two political parties to make decisions for everyone. And when we are looking at that, we are looking at Zanu PF and Triple C. These two political parties Firstly, they are so far apart. And like rightfully what Chamisa said, he says that zipi yacho yakaruza, which means the zip is no longer working. So they cannot find each other. So for them to come together and dialogue, I do not think it's even possible. It will be another wasted, if there is a GNU or if there's a transitional authority, it will be a wasted effort because they are so far apart. So what I think Zimbabwe needs, and what I think would motivate the SADC to do the right thing, is if we can find competent, able-bodied men and women that can come together and find a lasting solution. And what is the lasting solution? Is the implementation or the drafting of reforms. Then we can have a level playing field, and then we can invite Triple C and Zanu PF to go at it, and whoever comes victorious, we should be able to say congratulations to one or the other. I think that is the best possible solution that Zimbabwe can do for itself.
Well, I agree with you there, but I think I would want to rephrase it and say, at the present moment, to be quite honest, we do not have those competent people. And there is nothing that I could say Zimbabweans have done to show that they have got the competent people. Look what is happening. To start with, if we go back to the GNU, which was a golden opportunity to implement the reforms they're talking about, the 2008 to 2013, not even one token reform was implemented. Worse still, there are many Zimbabweans out there who still have no clue what happened during those GNU. Because whether we like it or not, the failure of the Zanu PF and the opposition MDC at the time would have not happened if the Zimbabweans themselves were looking over their shoulders and saying, hey, wait. Why are you not doing this? Why are you not doing that? No one was doing that. And so the two parties got away with it. That is a political reality that we've got to face. But the consequences of that failure is that even today, many people out there have no clue what the GNU was about. So even if I was SADC and saying, okay, all right, let's give Zimbabweans another chance, would I have any confidence with the present leadership and the electorate that they understand what the reforms are and they will get them implemented? I mean, what is your view? Do you seriously think anyone will have any confidence that Zimbabweans can implement reforms this time?
At least, I can see there are options that Zimbabweans are looking towards. They're coming up with another GNU. They're saying there's need for a national transition authority. There's need for re-elections. All these are good ideas, but we need to be practical and eliminate one by one. Like, for example, elections. How can we have new elections? Who is going to preside over them? Are we going to have ZEC come back again? I don't think that is why Zimbabwe doesn't need elections now. It needs to first level the playing field, so that we can have transparency, we can have accountability, and then we can have the political players come at the end of the day and play their match, and whoever wins, then we move forward. A GNU, like I said, Triple C and Zanu PF are so far apart. They will be just at each other's throat and fighting for which ministry I am going to take up. So that is a lost cause. So now we need somebody that is neutral to take up that transition authority until we implement and get to a situation where we think that we are near democracy. Then we can call all these other political actors to come and see if they who will win. I think that is the most logical step. But as it is, I think the problem with Zimbabweans is, us Zimbabweans, is that we are over reliant on Zanu PF and Triple C. It's either you belong to one or the other. And right now we don't need that. We really don't need that. And I think until we show SADC that, what, they themselves are not going to waste their time, they could just say, oh well, this is a hopeless situation, just like we did, and we warned them, that even after the 2013 elections, they did warn us that if you go into this year battle with Zanu PF as things stand, you will lose. And since then, we have still been participating in these elections, regardless. So sometimes they will see our foolishness, which doesn't really look nice at the end of the day.
Well, I think at the present moment, that's why I've got the picture of Nelson Mandela, Chamisa Mandela. Nelson Chamisa there on the screen. At the present moment, one of the indications that Zimbabweans are really not ready to focus on what needs to be done to get them out of this hole is what has happened in Triple C. The dust has not even settled yet after this SADC report has just been produced, and SADC leaders have still got to make up their mind. And already the infighting in Triple C itself has started. The recall of the 15 MPs is a circus. And I think this is one of the circus that it's a replay actually of what happened when Chamisa staged the palace coup to take over from Changirai in 2018, which led to the High Court ruling that it was unconstitutional. And then Thokozani Kupe took over. She recalled some MPs. And then when there was an election, Douglas Monzora took over. And he had his own shot at recalling some of those MPs who were not faithful to him. And then some of them, when they realized that Monzora was going nowhere, changed horses to join Chamisa. And now, hardly a few weeks after the election results are announced, we are already looking at recalls again. This is a circus. If I was a SADC leader, I would honestly say to myself or to my colleagues in SADC, gentlemen, we can recall, we can deny Zanu PF political legitimacy. That's fine. What then? Do we have in Zimbabwe the potential of getting quality leaders who will get the country to implement the reforms, whether it be through a GNU or a National Transition Authority, with the chaos that is happening in Zimbabwe right now? Do we see that happening? Because if you can't see that happening, you may just as well let the present chaos continue. You do not want to create another Iraq where you undermine Saddam Hussein's government and the whole thing collapses. or what happened in Libya. Then factions arise, and they've been fighting ever since. There hasn't been any meaningful progress there. And Zimbabwe could also drift into that. That is, I think, a serious problem that SADC, if I was a SADC leader, I would seriously be looking into.
Look, this is why I'm saying there is no need to have Zanu PF and or Triple C playing a part in the reform process. These are competitors. So we cannot have competitors making rules. They just come and just have to play while it's, everything has been sorted out for them.
Yeah, but Benjamin, you have got to say to yourself, at the present moment, the Zanu PF leaders and Triple C leaders see themselves as the rightful players. And what is worse, the Zimbabwe electorate, each of the parties, they've got their own following, and they are absolutely determined to see their own men or women play the key role. People like Professor Ibo Mandasa have proposed that the alternative will be to appoint a third of Zanu PF, a third Triple C, and a third of autocrats in a national transition authority and task them to implement the reforms. To start with, that will give 2/3 to Zanu PF and Triple C. And knowing from their past performance, if they fail to implement even one meaningful reform last time, I don't see how they will get any meaningful reforms done. Even with the 1/3 autocrats, they will forever be fighting to be heard in that crowd. But to think that we can have a national transition authority without those two parties, Zanu PF will make sure that the country is ungovernable. And they control all the state institutions, including the securocrats. And unfortunately, Zimbabweans themselves have not reached that point where they will be able to stand up to that kind of bullying from Zanu PF. That is one of the problems. And then we've got, of course, Triple C and their own followers as well. I think if you try to criticize what Triple C have done in the presence of some people, they start foaming around the mouth, regardless of whether what you're saying is true or not. That is the level of politics that we have, the level of failure to understand what is going on. They support their chosen leader so blindly to the point where you cannot have a meaningful debate. That is one of the problems. That is the reality on the ground.
Yes, I agree with you. It's that I think that is our drawback and our bottleneck as Zimbabweans, that we cannot put our political affiliations aside and come together just for it's a long term, how can I put it's a long term benefit to Zimbabwe, where you have an environment where it is conducive for everybody that wants to participate in an election that is free and fair, that is not questionable every time. So it's not about the political players now. It's about us together as Zimbabweans. That once we have implemented the political reforms, the electoral reforms that we need, Then we can bring in all the players, even you and I, when we decide we want to be part and parcel of politics or of positions within the political arena. It would be conducive for us to enter. This is what we for Zanu PF. They will never find each other. This is why you find the GNU was a waste. It was just debate going back and forth, going back and forth. It would not work. So we need neutral people, people that are competent. There's 16 million of us. I am sure we can find few individuals that are willing. We don't even have to. The people are willing. There are individuals that are willing to help, but we have to give them that platform. So we have to stop thinking about my political affiliation. They will always come and participate after the process has been done. I think this is where we need to clarify that we are not getting rid of Zanu PF or Triple C. No, we want to create an environment where whoever wins is not questioned about their legitimacy. It is beneficial to both of them at the end of the day.
I've just posted the link for some of the listeners out there if you want to join and have your say on the issue. Yeah, I think that is a valid point, but to be quite honest, we are still talking to your own hand. You know, some of these people, like I said, they support one side so blindly. They've got a binary understanding of issues. It's either you're right or you're wrong, period. There is no in between. And once they've decided that you're right, their commitment to that person or party is so total, they cannot accept that the party can do anything wrong. This is what is so wrong with our politics. This is why we are stuck. Because if you cannot appreciate that what is going on is wrong, regardless of whether this is the party I have supported all my life, it doesn't matter. Because this is what happened also soon after independence. The people had so much confidence in Zanu PF. It was unthinkable, simply unthinkable that you could have a situation where Mugabe could do anything wrong. Even when at the time we had the Gukura Wundi, what was happening there? You have got to say this is not right. And yet some people still wanted to hang on to Zanu PF. And some of them, to criticize Zanu PF was so unthinkable that you honestly risk being lynched. That's how naive and committed they are. It took them about 20 years before they finally woke up to the reality that yes, Mugabe was a tyrant, a dictator, a murderous one for that. And by that time, of course, Zanu PF had dug in and formed the de facto one-party state that we found ourselves stuck with all these years. So that is a problem. And now the same thing has happened with Triple C. There are some people there where you cannot have an honest debate with them when it comes to Chamisa. The guy has just led the nation, telling them he has plugged all the vote rigging holes, for instance. God is in it. And people believed him. But even when the result came out and it became very clear that he actually had not plugged any of the holes at all. I mean, we've just been talking earlier on about the voters' roll. You know, that is amazing how you can go into an election without a verified voters' roll. particularly one when you know it has got so many flaws in it. And yet, that's what we did. And to try to say to some of these people, we did something wrong there. You say it, and they've got to always make sure that you have got a bolt hole to quickly escape, because some people get so emotional about it. It's like you've insulted their God, and they've got an obligation to defend the God at all costs. And that is unfortunate, because that has stifled meaningful debate. And therefore, then what you're talking about, that, it is in everybody's interest that we have a healthy and functioning democratic system, implementing the democratic reforms so that we have got a healthy and functioning democracy in Zimbabwe will be to the benefit of everybody. But that reasoning, you have got to have somebody to have a meaningful dialogue for you to hold that kind of conversation. That is the tragedy here. These are some of the comments that we are getting from some of our listeners out there.
Yes, our political affiliations. I personally do not say, do not support this party or the other. I mean, everybody has got a choice. But when it comes to the benefit of Zimbabwe, both, so we need a situation where we create a lasting solution to this, political problem that we have, where even the winner at the end of the day does not get, recognition from others, right? Which then also, like, for example, Zanu PF is saying they have won, but then they are not getting the legitimacy from other nations, which means how then do you go about claiming re-engagement? So we are also helping fix that problem. So it's actually killing two birds with one stone. So I think this is where we need to think about the greater good of the nation rather than one's political affiliation.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment quickly on Chamnorwa Chitsike's comment there. GNU is a non-starter since the main ministries will be allocated to the ruling party, unless if they are shared equally. Well, I think that argument has been made, and but if you look at the GNU as it was formulated in 2008 to 2013, who got what ministry had nothing to do with the implementation of the reforms. I think that point is an important one, and many people have failed to understand it. The process of implementing the reforms was that any member of parliament, or senate or the cabinet could submit a reform proposal. It was then the responsibility of parliament to debate that reform proposal. Take, for instance, you're trying to reform ZEC. We want ZEC to be independent. What is it we need to do? So you write your reform proposal. Parliament would then add, subtract, polish up that reform proposal. once they are happy with it, they will send it then as a reform proposal to President Mugabe for his signature. If you look at the history of what happened during the GNU, you will find there was not even one reform proposal that was submitted in Parliament during those 5 years. That had nothing to do with the ministry. You didn't have to be in the Ministry of Justice to reform ZEC. That is the point. And I think understanding that is also fundamental to what is going to happen next. Because in this case here, if we are serious about change, I think the best solution that the SADC heads of state could do for us would be to stand up to Zanu PF and say, listen, these elections were not free, fair, and credible. And we are not going to grant you political legitimacy. We want to see a national transition authority that will implement the democratic reforms to make sure that this case of rigged election is addressed once and once for all. And like what Ben was saying there, we want to appoint men and women who will implement those reforms. But if we do not understand what those reforms are, how they are supposed to be implemented, SADC cannot do that for us as well. We should have learned something at least from the last GNU. And that is the point of this discussion. We have not learned anything. And that is the tragedy of Zimbabwe. At the present moment, I honestly think SADC, even those who are serious about wanting to see Zimbabwe move out of this mess, will find it very difficult to do so, for the simple reason that it really is a situation where you're saying, okay, even if you want to do so, who is going to do it? The minute you get Zimbabweans involved, they will start quarreling about positions, quarreling about power, and most of those people who want to get into position have no clue what the reforms are. In fact, they don't care about the reforms. All they want is to get into power, as was shown during the GNU. So that is the problem, Chitsike. I think this is what we really, this discussion is all about.
I also want to say that, you know, when we're looking at Zimbabwe, let's look at it as a whole. Zimbabwe just doesn't have two stakeholders. There are a lot of stakeholders. There are a lot of people that have the ability to implement reforms. Let us not say Zanu PF and MDC, those are not just the two. There are a lot of other institutions that are willing, but they have to be given the voice. They have to be given acknowledgement. You know, even if you look at the report, you know, it just states other stakeholders. Yes, there are other stakeholders. I'm sure they can't mention them by name for the sake of convenience, but there are other stakeholders. So we have the capacity to do the right thing. It's only that we have to stop thinking within the box of Zanu PF and CCC and involve others. There are other individuals and organizations that are there that are willing to help. So I don't see it as a dead end. No, we just need to think outside the box.
Yeah. And Tsike there has just come up with another comment, a follow-up comment on this one, saying that is the speaker, is he captured, going to propose end of it in Parliament? well, at the present moment, I don't know what, if you're referring to the SADC report, the ball is really not in Zanu PF or in Zimbabwe anymore. The ball is in SADC's court. SADC election observer team have come up with their report, and they've produced their final report, and their final report is detailed enough to say these elections were flawed and illegal. And now it was SADC heads of state who have got now to come and say, what are they going to do about it? Zanu PF has already come up with his position that is going to ignore that report, pretend the reforms that, the flaws that the report talks about are minor ones, which some of the Zanu PF are saying, we'll get them implemented before the next next election, which everybody knows they will just ignore anyway, as they've done so many times. So that is the reality. The Speaker of the House is not in Zimbabwe's court at the moment.
And to add, the Speaker is meant to preside over Parliament. The parliamentarians are the ones that are supposed to table those the reforms, or any reform, that specific reform that you want to be implemented. So we cannot go and blame, to say, the Speaker. Like during the GNU, no parliamentarian came up, no individual, nobody tabled anything. So we cannot say the Speaker was captured. No, that's not right. I think that needs to be corrected.
Yeah. Well, thanks very much, Benjamin, for your contribution. I think, in conclusion, I would say the prospects are SADC leaders will do nothing about the damning report from their own election observer team. And my view is that it will really damage SADC's credibility, particularly when it is a report from their own observer team. For them to sweep it under the carpet doesn't make any sense at all, particularly in a country where it has had a history of rigged elections. And they must also know that Zimbabwe desperately needs a way out of this mess. And by sweeping the report under the carpet, I think they will be undermining their own political credibility, but most important of all, they will have let the ordinary people of Zimbabwe down. Yes, it will be tough for them to say, we'll take Zanu PF head on and tell them that those elections were flawed and we do not give you political legitimacy. They know that Zanu PF is not going to give up power easily. But the alternative is even worse. Zanu PF staying on will only drag the country deeper and deeper into trouble, and the whole region with it. And the sooner SADC take this problem head on, the better. And in this particular case, I think they should turn around to the UN and other institutions and ask them to step in to help. But taking Zanu PF head on is the only rational solution, given the report, because even if they were to sweep it under the carpet, the AU will be forced to do the same, and they too will lose political credibility. So take Zanu PF head on. And as they say in Shona, it will be a tough decision, but they will have to take even a tougher decision by standing up to Zanu PF and telling them that they cannot be in the National Transition Authority because they failed to implement reforms in the past. And I think if they made that stand, and I hope there will be many Zimbabweans out there who for once will stand up and be counted and show the world that, yes, we've got people who are willing to stand up and be counted to get Zimbabwe out of this mess. Those Zimbabweans can implement the reforms, and in 5 years' time or so, the country will hold fresh elections and have a truly democratic footing. I believe if we implement all the democratic reforms, we will have quality leaders, even within the existing parties. But I should expect there will be also new parties that will emerge as a result of a more free, democratic atmosphere out there. And that will give Zimbabwe the start in the rebuilding of the country. To get the country out of this mess, we have to concentrate on reforms. There cannot be any other shortcut. And getting the National Transition Authority at the present moment is our best option. If SADC let us down, then we are in serious trouble. Because once Zanu PF gets political legitimacy, it's not going to give up power. It's going to hang on. Another 5 years of this, and at the end of it, there's no light at the end of the tunnel. Zanu PF thugs will be as hungry to stay in power as they are today. So they'll be ready to rig the next elections as well. So the situation will just continue. There is no end to this. This is a vicious cycle. And the sooner we confront it, the sooner we deal with it, the better. Don't know whether, Ben, you would like to give your closing remarks there.
Okay, thank you. In conclusion, I would rather, I'm positive. I would say I would like to commend SADC for the stance, SADC Observer Team for the stance that they took. For the first time, they said the truth as it is. The elections did not measure to the laws of Zimbabwe, to the constitution of Zimbabwe, to the laws of the land, and the SADC laws and measuring stick, let me say. And I think that is a positive stance that they have shown for the first time in quite some time. And now I believe, and I firmly believe, if we are going to blame anybody going forward, it is going to be Zimbabwe or Zimbabweans. What have we done for ourselves that we can forge a way forward, that we can put an end to this mess that we are in? It is now, the onus is on us to put aside our political differences and do the right thing. And the only thing that will stop us from having a repeat of the same mess that we find ourselves is by coming together, individuals or collective, to implement the reforms that are needed, such that going forward, we will not have a problem of legitimacy questions and rigging of elections. And then we can finally move forward as a country together. I don't mind Zanu PF winning again under, true democracy. I would appreciate that. And I think from there, like what you said, we would get better leadership, because the process is not flawed, is not questionable. So for me, I am positive that, you know, SADC has taken a good stance. The onus is now on Zimbabweans. What is the way forward? Thank you.
Thank you. Well, maybe as a point of correction, we may beg to differ with Benjamin there that the onus is on Zimbabwe. At the present moment, yes, the onus is on Zimbabwe to show that we are ready to implement the democratic reforms. But we are also must convince SADC that we are ready. But the real decision will lie with SADC. Whether or not SADC is going to have their extraordinary SADC meeting, we'll have to wait and see. There have been rumors that they will have that extraordinary summit on the 31st of October in Tanzania. We have not had any confirmation. And if that happens, I think that will be the game changer. So meanwhile, all we can do is make sure that we hammer in SADC, that Zimbabweans, and I think there are a reasonable number of Zimbabweans who are beginning to appreciate that we are in a fix and they can see the way out and they can see why we need reforms and they understand what those reforms are. And they are capable, given the chance, to implement those reforms. On that note, thank you very much, Benjamin, for joining the discussion. And for the listeners, I hope you'll be able to join us next time. And I hope this time you'll be able to also log in and join in the discussion. This is open to all Zimbabweans. We want to hear your opinion, not just your comments. We still want to hear your comments, of course, but we also will welcome you to join the program. So once again, thank you very much, Benjamin, and to everybody. Good night.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Good night.